They said the moon never cries, but that night even the stars wept for me. I was born under her silver light, a moon-born Omega, blessed with a bond that was supposed to be sacred. He was my destined alpha, the one I was made for. But destiny lied. His eyes looked at me like I was filth. His voice tore me apart when he whispered, "I reject you." That was the night my soul died, and the darkness heard it. In the silence that followed, something ancient reached out to me, not with pity, but with desire, not to save me, but to claim me. They call him a monster, the Lord of the Abyss, the devourer of light. But when he looked at me, I wasn't broken anymore. I was his. And this world that spat on my name will soon burn beneath my crown. The moon hung low over the kingdom of Arendor, a silver crescent slicing through the velvet sky like a jagged promise. In the capital, the air was alive with anticipation. Every street, every balcony glittered with lanterns, heralding the night of the celestial ceremony. Omegas born under the moon's blessing were gathered in the grand amphitheater, each cloaked in silks that shimmered with threads of silver and starlight. Among them, Elias moved with a measured grace, though his heart thudded violently against his ribs, as though protesting the betrayal he could already feel in his bones. He had been chosen, fated. As the prophecy said, to bond with the Alpha Prince, Kalor of House Veyron. His family had whispered it as he was born, their voices trembling with pride and expectation. The moon-born Omega will complete him, they said. He will be your light and you his. But none of them had prepared him for the weight of rejection. Kalor stood at the dais, resplendent in robes of deep midnight embroidered with threads of gold. His eyes, sharp as obsidian, scanned the amphitheater as if he were measuring the worth of each soul before him. When they landed on Elias, the air seemed to thicken. The crowd fell into a hush. Elias felt the cold knife of anticipation, the sharp edge of his own trembling hope. He stepped forward, head bowed, heart open. The words that left Kalor's lips would shatter centuries of expectation. "I do not accept you." It was not just rejection. It was an execution of spirit, a ceremonial decapitation of the hope that had pulsed in Elias's chest since birth. The amphitheater trembled, not with surprise, but with awe at the audacity of a prince to deny fate itself. Elias felt his knees buckle, though he remained upright, a marionette of composure. The world blurred, the crowd faded into whispers and stares, and the moon above seemed to recoil. Pain erupted within him, a fire hotter than any flame he had ever known, a consuming ache that tore through sinew and bone alike. But in the center of that agony, something stirred. The moonfire, dormant for years, sleeping beneath layers of obedience and fear, awakened with a roar that no one could see but him. It coursed through his veins, a surge of silver and violet light that made his heartbeat audible in the hollow silence. The rejection, meant to break him, had forged a spark that would ignite a storm. He stumbled from the amphitheater, eyes blazing with light that had nothing to do with moon or lanterns, and vanished into the streets, where the shadows twisted in curiosity. None dared follow. None could. For the world was beginning to see, even if they did not yet understand, that Elias was no longer just the rejected moonborn. He was something far greater, far darker. Beyond the city, past the fortified walls, lay the cursed lands where no sun touched the earth, and no star dared linger. It was here that Kale watched, a figure draped in shadow, eternal as the night itself. He felt the tremor of Elias's awakening ripple through the realm. A faint smile curved Kale's lips, not of amusement, but of interest, of recognition. So fragile, so broken, and yet a power that could rend worlds lay dormant in that small, trembling body. Kale's interest was not casual. He was drawn by instinct, by hunger, by a promise that whispered from the void. The Omega, who had been abandoned by fate, rejected by light, this one would belong to darkness. Elias wandered through the cursed forests, moonlight pale and weak against the gnarl of ancient trees. He did not weep. Tears had long since dried in the furnace of his humiliation. Instead, a cold determination took root. If the world would not claim him, he would take his own place among the stars, even if it meant walking through fire, shadow, and blood. And Kale, watching from the abyssal cliffs beyond the cursed lands, felt the first pull of possession. The Omega was his before he even knew his name. Fate had discarded him, the world had forsaken him, and now Kale would claim him. Slowly, deliberately, darkly. The night deepened. Stars blinked nervously behind clouds, and in the hollow of the cursed lands, the moonborn Omega's power blossomed, tendrils of silver and violet curling like serpents around his heart. The first step of revenge had been taken, not against Kalor, not against the world, but for Elias himself. A new era was beginning, one that would see kingdoms crumble and gods tremble. And in the darkness, a fallen god waited, patient and eternal, for the Omega who had been rejected, but who would rise to rule at his side. The cursed forest was alive in ways Elias had never known. Branches arched overhead like skeletal fingers, and the wind whispered secrets in voices that sounded almost human. Every step he took pressed him further into the heart of a darkness untouched by the light of Arendor's moons. And yet, within the oppressive shadow, there was a strange solace, an unfamiliar pull, as if the night itself recognized his brokenness and welcomed him. He stumbled upon a clearing where the air shimmered faintly, disturbed by something ancient and powerful. The moonfire in him flared at the presence, responding to a force beyond understanding. And then he saw him. Kale stood at the edge of the clearing, tall, imposing, his form wrapped in shadows that moved like living tendrils. His hair was as dark as the void, and his eyes, oh, his eyes, were endless pits of desire and dominion. In that gaze, Elias felt naked, his very soul laid bare. Kale was not human. He was a force of nature, a fallen god whose hunger for power had been eclipsed only by his obsession with the rare and the broken. "You are far from home," Kale's voice echoed, rich and deep, yet soft enough to make Elias's skin prickle. There was no malice in it, yet it carried the weight of inevitability. I am no one now," Elias whispered, the words tasting like ash on his tongue. "Fate abandoned me, and the world rejected me." Kale's lips curved into a faint, unreadable smile. Rejection can be liberating. The world discards what it does not understand, what it fears. But the darkness, he paused, stepping closer, shadows trailing him like a cloak. The darkness does not reject. It claims. Elias shivered, not from cold, but from the undeniable pull that Kale's presence exerted. He felt exposed, vulnerable, yet strangely safe, as if surrendering to this being, this god, might not destroy him, but awaken him. "You are more than nothing, far more. Brokenness is not weakness, it is a forge, and from it, the strongest are born." Elias hesitated, instincts screaming to flee, but something in Kale's aura held him, suspended in a gravity of shadow and intent. His moonfire flared brighter, recognizing the latent connection between them. "I sense it in you, the power that the world rejected, that they could not claim. And I." He stepped closer, dark aura enveloping Elias like a tangible weight. "I want it. I want you." For the first time since Kaler's rejection, Elias did not feel fear. He felt recognition, not just of power, but of belonging. The darkness called to him, caressed the edges of his shattered soul, and whispered promises no one had ever dared speak. "Why me?" he asked, barely audible, the words trembling with both hope and fear. Kale's gaze softened, just slightly, enough to make Elias's heart falter. "Because you are the one the world forsook, and I collect what the world throws away." It was an invitation, though not one spoken with civility. It was a summons from a force older than kingdoms, older than gods, and it was terrifying, and it was intoxicating. The moonfire within Elias surged, as if recognizing a kindred darkness in Kale. He had been rejected by light, abandoned by fate, but here in the shadowed presence of a fallen god, he felt seen, whole. Kale extended his hand again, more insistently, yet with patience threaded through his power. "Step into the abyss with me, Elias. Learn what you are capable of. Let me show you the strength that rejection has hidden in you." Elias looked down at the hand, the dark aura wrapping around it like living silk. The decision burned in his chest. One step could mean surrender, yet it could also mean awakening. For the first time since the ceremony, he felt the faintest flicker of hope, and not the fragile, transient hope of mortals, but the raw, feral promise of power. His fingers trembled, then moved, until they rested lightly against Kale's outstretched hand. The contact was electric, a spark that seared into the deepest layers of his soul. Shadows coiled around him, the world beyond the forest disappearing into silence. And Kale smiled, ever so faintly, like a god who had finally found what he had been hunting for eons. "You belong to me now," Kale whispered, almost a vow, almost a warning. "And I will not let the world touch you again." The words reverberated through Elias, echoing in the hollow spaces left by rejection. For the first time, he did not feel weak. He felt powerful, dangerous, desired, and the slow, inevitable pull between them began, a connection forged, not in the light of fate, but in the fire of darkness. The moon above the cursed forest seemed to waver, its silver light trembling against the shadows that now cradled the moonborn Omega. The night had shifted, the broken had been claimed, and a new story, soaked in fire, shadow, and longing, was beginning. The forest seemed alive with whispers, each rustle of leaves and shift of shadow attuned to Elias's heartbeat. He had followed Kyle deeper into the cursed lands, yet he felt no fear now, only the quiet, thrilling awareness that every step brought him closer to something he had never dared imagine: power. The kind of power that had been denied to him by fate, by Kalor, by the world that had spat him out like refuse. Kale walked beside him, not touching, not forcing, yet every movement carried weight, a gravity that pressed against Elias's chest. Shadows clung to him like silk, curling around his shoulders and arms as if aware of the fire that had begun to awaken inside the Omega. Kale's eyes, endless and dark, followed every flicker of Elias's expression, noting the tremor of hesitation, the quiver of excitement, and the spark of defiance that refused to die. "You feel it," Kale said softly, voice carrying the low hum of inevitability. "The moonfire. The gift they tried to bury within you. It responds to your anger, your heartbreak, your desire to rise above them all." Elias closed his eyes, letting the words seep into him. He had always known he was different, special, but no one had ever guided him, only judged, only condemned. Now, under Kale's gaze, that same difference ignited. He could feel the fire spreading along his veins, a sensation at once painful and exquisite, as if the very core of his being was being rewritten. I can feel it," he murmured, voice barely audible, trembling with awe. "It's alive." Kale stepped closer, letting the shadows encircle Elias completely, isolating him from the world. "Yes," he said, almost reverently. "It is alive, and it is yours. If you learn to command it, the world that rejected you will kneel before you." Elias shivered at the thought, not from fear, but from the intoxicating promise of power. Every pulse of his moonfire made the air hum. Silver and violet light flickered across the forest floor, illuminating the dark like a living, breathing thing. It was no longer just energy. It was emotion, desire, rage, and longing all entwined. And Kale, ever patient, ever observant, smiled faintly at the display, as though watching a rare jewel finally reveal its brilliance. "Do you know why I claimed you?" Kale asked, voice low, melodic, dangerous. "Because you are broken in a way I recognize, because the world discarded you, and because you are extraordinary. You have no idea what you are capable of yet, Elias, but I will show you." The Omega swallowed, pulse racing, not from fear, but from the undeniable pull of Kale's presence. Every word, every subtle movement of the fallen god sent shivers crawling along his spine. The shadows that enveloped them were no longer threatening. They were protective, almost caressing, responding to the rhythm of Kale's intent and Elias's awakening. Kale extended his hand, and Elias hesitated only briefly before placing his palm against it. The moment their fingers touched, the moonfire erupted, not like a flame, but like a sun trapped within his chest, radiating through his veins, illuminating the darkness around them. Elias gasped, clutching his chest, and Kale's shadowed cloak shimmered, absorbing some of the light, bending it to his will. "Your fire is magnificent," Kale murmured, voice threaded with something between desire and ownership. "It is wild, untamed, and it belongs to no one, except me." Elias's heart clenched at the possessiveness in Kale's words, a feeling that both thrilled and terrified him. He had been rejected, discarded, and ignored his whole life. And now, a being older than kingdoms, more powerful than gods, was claiming him with nothing but a whisper. The sensation was intoxicating, dizzying, and undeniable. "Teach me," Elias whispered, almost pleading, though he did not yet fully understand what he was asking. "Teach me to be strong." Kale's lips curved into a dark smile. "Oh, you will learn, but strength is not given, it is earned. And you, Moonborn, have already taken the first step by embracing the fire they tried to extinguish." For hours, they remained in the forest clearing, Kale guiding the moonfire's first tentative flames. Elias's body ached, not from exhaustion, but from the intensity of emotions he had never allowed himself to feel. Fear, longing, rage, and the delicate thrill of desire. Each pulse of power drew him closer to Kale, each surge of moonfire binding him more firmly to the fallen god. By the time dawn threatened the horizon, Elias was no longer just the rejected Omega. He was something more, something stronger, something terrifying in its potential. And Kale, watching him with a possessive intensity that bordered on obsession, knew that the bond had already begun. The first sparks of their connection were ignited in the night, the Omega who had been broken by fate and the god who thrived in darkness. Together, they would rise. Together, they would command fear and desire alike. And the world, which had rejected Elias, would one day kneel. The cursed forest had become a sanctuary, a place where the world's judgment could not touch him. Elias stood at the edge of a cliff, the wind tugging at his cloak, the first hints of dawn bleeding pale light over the jagged rocks below. The moonfire hummed in his chest, simmering like a star ready to explode, and for the first time since his rejection, he felt an inkling of peace, a fragile, trembling peace that Kale had coaxed from the ashes of his shattered soul. Kale emerged from the shadows behind him, silent as the night that had birthed him. He did not touch Elias immediately. His presence was enough. A gravitational pull that Elias could neither resist nor deny. Kale murmured, voice low, smooth, dangerous, more potent. "The moonfire is not merely a tool, Elias. It is a part of you, and the world that rejected you will soon see how unstoppable you have become. I never imagined someone would see me." Kale's lips curved in a smile that was both tender and predatory. "See you? No, I do more than see you. I claim you. Every part of you, your power, your fire, your fear, your desire, they all belong to me now, if you allow it." Elias's breath caught. To be claimed in such a way was terrifying and intoxicating. He had been abandoned, discarded, treated like a mistake, and yet here was a being older than kingdoms, stronger than gods, offering him sanctuary, power, and something he could not name, yet already craved. "What must I do?" he whispered, voice barely audible. "How do I belong to you?" Kale stepped closer, shadows curling around him, not to threaten, but to enfold, to protect, to mark. "Nothing and everything. You must accept yourself. You must accept the fire within you. And you must accept me. That is all it takes to bind us." The people and places from the moment settling over him like a tide. To accept Kale was to accept the darkness, and to embrace it fully would change him forever. And yet, for the first time in his life, the Omega felt whole. He lowered his gaze, then slowly met Kale's eyes. "I accept you," he whispered. "I accept myself." The shadows thickened, a living, breathing presence that wrapped around them both. Kale reached out, brushing a hand over Elias's cheek, his touch sending shivers down the Omega's spine. "Then it is done," Kale murmured. "Our bond is forged, not by fate, not by prophecy, not by the light, but by choice, by fire, and by darkness." Essentially, the moonfire flared, brighter than ever, enveloping Elias in its silver-violet glow. Kale's eyes reflected it, and for a moment it seemed as if the world itself had stopped, holding its breath in reverence of what had been created, a bond that defied the heavens, that rejected the world's chains, that promised power, obsession, and love twisted into one. Elias felt the darkness of the cursed forest sink into him, not as a threat, but as a mantle of strength. The Omega, who had been rejected by the world, discarded by light, now had a purpose, a master, a protector, and a teacher in Kale. And Kale, the fallen god, had found in him something he had long sought, the equal to his obsession, the fire that would match his own eternal shadow. They remained on the cliff as dawn broke, the first rays of sunlight touching the edges of the abyss. Elias felt it deep in his chest, a mixture of power, longing, and something darkly sweet. The first pact was sealed, not with words alone, but with understanding, fire, and shadow. And as the winds carried whispers of the kingdom below, Elias allowed himself a single thought, quiet and profound. They rejected me. Fate abandoned me. But I belong to the darkness now. And the world will pay for what it took from me. Kale's hand found his again, firm, possessive, and alive. Rise, Moonborn, he murmured. Your journey has only begun. The world will learn soon enough that broken fire can burn brighter than any crown. And Elias smiled, a slow, dangerous curve of lips that spoke of vengeance, awakening, and desire. The moonfire blazed within him, and the slow, inevitable intertwining of their fates began. The night of the broken moon had ended. The rise of the eclipsed one had begun. The abyss stretched endlessly, a kingdom of shadows untouched by mortal sun, where the air itself pulsed with ancient power. Here the fallen god Kale ruled, and here Elias would learn the full measure of the gift and the curse that had awakened within him. The Omega had spent a night under Kale's watchful gaze, letting the moonfire burn, letting the shadows cradle him, letting himself be consumed by a strange, intoxicating sense of belonging. And now, at the first lightless dawn, Kale led him into the heart of the abyss, a place where even gods whispered with caution. Every step you take here, Kale said, voice low and measured, will test what you are made of. Your moonfire will answer only to your will. If your mind falters, if your heart doubts, it will consume you, and I will not stop it. Elias swallowed, feeling the weight of the warning. The fire in his chest thrummed, eager, impatient, alive. It had tasted freedom and recognition once, and it would not be denied. I will not fail, Elias said, voice firm, though his pulse betrayed the tremor of fear. I will rise. Kale's eyes narrowed, shadows twisting across his face. Good. The world cast you aside, but here you will learn to be feared, to be desired, to be unstoppable. The first trial was not physical. It was mental. The abyss projected visions, illusions born of Elias's deepest fears, his memories of rejection, his lingering pain at Kalor's betrayal. Shadows became faceless specters that whispered, hissed, and clawed at him, demanding submission, begging him to turn back. Elias's moonfire flared instinctively, its silver-violet glow illuminating the endless darkness. He gritted his teeth, focusing, pushing past the fear, past the memory of rejection. Each pulse of fire expelled a shadow, yet another rose, relentless, testing him. You are stronger than they believed. Kale's voice cut through the storm of illusions. He emerged from the periphery of Elias's vision, a dark sentinel. Stronger than you know. Do not falter. This is not just training, it is survival, and it is your awakening. Elias's breaths came fast, shallow, but steady. He began to understand. The moonfire was not just a weapon, it was a reflection of himself, of his pain, of his desire, and his will to rise above the world that rejected him. The illusions did not scare him anymore. They fueled him. They became the tinder to the fire Kale had awakened. By the time the first phase of the trial ended, Elias stood amidst a clearing of dissipating shadows, sweat and residual energy glimmering on his skin. He looked to Kale, expecting judgment or correction. Instead, Kale's expression was unreadable, as if he had already known Elias would endure. You are learning, Kale said softly. stepping closer, his aura pressing against Elias like a tangible weight. But understanding your power is only part of the path. Controlling desire, controlling submission. That is what separates the Omega who is strong from the one who is claimed. Elias's chest tightened at the possessive tone, the underlying heat in Kale's words. He could feel it, the pull of the god's obsession, as tangible as the moonfire coiling in his veins. Fear and exhilaration warred within him, yet he did not resist. How could he? Kale's attention was a force, binding him as firmly as the fire he had learned to wield. The next trial will not be with illusions, Kale continued, voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. It will be with desire, with temptation. The fire you carry is not just to destroy. It can be used to command, to enthrall, to bind. Elias felt his pulse quicken. Desire, power. The words merged in his chest like a warning and a promise. He had been rejected, abandoned, and discarded. But now, he was learning that fire could become a throne, that darkness could become sanctuary, and that the God beside him was both master and mirror to his awakening. The shadows of the abyss shifted around them as Kale extended his hand, not to guide, but to claim again. Step forward, Elias, he said. Show me how far you will rise, not as a moon-born Omega, not as the rejected, but as mine. Elias placed his hand in Kale's, and for the first time, the moonfire and shadow intertwined completely. He felt the binding pull of Kale's power, not force, not chains, but a claim that penetrated every fiber of his being. It was intoxicating, frightening, and irresistible. And as the abyss closed around them, Elias understood a truth deeper than any prophecy. He was no longer merely broken. He was rising, rising under darkness, rising under fire, rising under the fallen God who had claimed him. The bond had begun in shadow, strengthened by desire, and now nothing in the world could deny it. Days passed in the abyss without the constraints of time. The sun could not reach this place, and the moon had no dominion here. Only shadows, only fire, only the pulse of Kale's presence to mark the passing of hours. Elias moved through the trials with growing confidence, each step drawing him closer to mastery of the moonfire. Yet alongside strength, a new fire awakened within him, one tied not to power alone, but to the God who had claimed him. Kale's fascination was subtle at first, a brush of shadow across Elias's shoulder as he adjusted his stance, a lingering gaze that lingered too long, a voice that dropped to velvet whispers whenever Elias faltered. But even these small gestures carried weight, and the Omega felt it deep in his chest, the undeniable pull of possession, of desire, tempered with intent. You are learning quickly, Kale said one evening, his voice low, carrying through the hollowed halls of the abyss like a caress. But strength alone will not make you mine. You must feel it, accept it. Let yourself be consumed, Elias. Elias swallowed. The words stirred something he had never felt before. Not fear, not shame, but a desperate craving to belong, to be seen, to be wanted. Kale's obsession was palpable, a current of desire threading through every command, every touch, every shadowed look. I want to be stronger, Elias admitted, voice trembling. Not just for me, but for you. Kale's smile was slow, deliberate, as if savoring a taste forbidden to others. For me? He murmured, stepping closer until the shadows between them flickered and bent. Do you understand what it means to be mine? To be claimed in every sense? Not just body, but soul, fire, will. Elias's chest tightened. The answer was yes, even before he could form it. He had been rejected, discarded, abandoned, yet here was a being older than time itself, claiming him wholly, consuming him with the gaze of a god, and he wanted it, craved it more than he had ever craved anything in his life. I want it, he whispered, all of it. Kale's shadow shifted, wrapping around Elias, almost protective, almost suffocating. Good, he said softly, dangerously, because once you give yourself, there is no turning back, and I will not let you go. The moonfire surged at the words, responding to the tangled heat of desire. fear, and power that coiled in Elias's chest. He felt the shadows tighten, felt Kale's possessive pull entwine with the fire in a dance of dominance and surrender. And yet, there was no pain. Only exhilaration, only awakening, only the intoxicating thrill of being claimed. The next trial Kale imposed was one of control, not physical, not yet, but emotional. Elias was to walk through the Hall of Mirrors, where illusions of desire, doubt, and fear would confront him. Each reflection whispered lies, that Kale's interest was fleeting, that power would corrupt him, that he would be alone even in the god's presence. Elias's hands flared with moonfire, each pulse dispelling shadowy distortions. He felt Kale's presence like a tether at his side, guiding, protecting, claiming. The god's voice echoed in his mind, a soft, relentless mantra. You are mine, you are mine, you are mine. And with each repetition, the Omega's resolve solidified. He was not weak. He was not discarded. He was not forgotten. He was rising, under Kale, beside Kale, consumed by a fire and a darkness that mirrored his own. By the time he emerged from the mirrors, drenched in sweat, trembling from exertion and exhilaration alike, Kale's eyes were on him, dark, deep, and unyielding. You did well, Kale said, voice low, possessive. But know this, my claim is not just a bond, it is a fire. You will burn, and I will fan the flames. I will not let anyone touch you, not now, not ever. Elias's chest tightened at the words. The possessiveness, the obsession, the dark love, it terrified him and thrilled him in equal measure. He had been abandoned by light, discarded by fate, but now he was something else entirely, desired, seen, and awakened. I understand, Elias whispered, letting the fire settle into his veins, letting the shadows embrace him fully. I am yours, Kale, all of me. Kale's smile deepened, shadowed and darkly tender. Good, and you will learn, Elias, that to be mine is not merely to serve, but to rise, to rule, to burn brighter than any crown the world dares to place above you. The Hall of Shadows pulsed around them, reflecting not just Elias's power, but the slow, consuming fire of a bond forged in darkness. Desire and possession intertwined, a dangerous dance that neither could deny and neither could resist. In that moment, Elias understood fully. The moonfire was not merely a weapon. It was a mirror of his soul, a reflection of Kale's obsession, and the first step toward an unstoppable rise. And the world that had rejected him would one day bow, not just to him, but to the darkness that had claimed him wholly. The abyss was alive, whispering, thrumming, bending to the rhythm of Kale's will, and the moonfire that now pulsed vividly within Elias. Each day brought a new trial, each trial a lesson not just in power, but in the unrelenting connection that bound them together. Kale's possessiveness was no longer subtle. It was woven into every command, every glance, every shadow that touched Elias's skin. Today, Elias faced a test of mastery. Shadows rose from the ground, coiling like serpents, striking with the swiftness of lightning. Each tendril was a mirror of his doubts, his fears, his past rejection. To survive, Elias had to channel the moonfire in ways he had never attempted before, bending it not just to attack, but to protect, to dominate, to claim. You hesitate, Kale observed, his voice low, almost a caress against the rush of adrenaline. Do not let the past weaken you. Do not let your fears govern your fire. Elias's chest tightened. Kale's rejection still burned in memory, but the fire within him roared louder. With a sharp intake of breath, he thrust his palms forward, moonfire erupting like a living sun, the silver-violet blaze consuming the shadows in a dance of light and darkness. Each pulse of flame was a statement. I will not be discarded. I will not be weak. Kale's eyes glimmered, shadowed and dark, as he stepped closer, letting the power wash over him. Good, he murmured, possessive warmth threading his tone. But mastery is not enough. Strength is nothing without loyalty, without understanding the bond that ties us. You are mine, Elias, and I will not allow anyone, mortal or divine, to claim what belongs to me. Elias's body shivered at the words. Possession, obsession, desire, all interlacing in ways that made his heart pound and his blood hum. He had been rejected, cast aside and discarded, but now he was claimed in ways that stirred a fire far beyond Moonfire alone. Kale's ownership was a mantle, a tether, a dark promise that thrilled and terrified him simultaneously. "I understand," Elias whispered, lowering his gaze, voice quivering, not from fear, but from the intensity of being seen, desired and bound. "I am yours, all of me." Kale's lips curved in a shadowed, predatory smile. "And I will not let you forget it," he murmured. His shadow reached out, brushing against Elias's cheek in a touch that was both tender and claiming. The sensation sent a thrill through the Omega's body, a delicious mixture of fear, desire, and anticipation. "Today, you learned control," Kale continued, his voice low, threading into Elias's thoughts. "Tomorrow, you will learn to bend not just fire, but fate itself. And he paused, letting the words linger. "I will ensure that no one, not even the heavens, can touch what is mine." Elias's eyes met Kale's, silver-violet fire, reflecting in the god's dark gaze, desire, longing, obsession, and devotion intertwined in a dangerous web. He had been broken by rejection, but now, in the shadows of the abyss, with the possessive god who had claimed him, he felt whole, powerful, alive. "Kale," Elias breathed, voice soft, tentative, but carrying the weight of something irrevocable. I trust you." Kale's smile deepened, his fingers brushing the Omega's lips, a claim more intimate than any physical touch. "Good," he whispered, "because to bind yourself to me is to bind your soul, your fire, your destiny. And once bound, there is no release, no escape. Only us, Elias. Only this fire, this darkness, this bond." The moonfire within Elias surged, responding to the possessive, obsessive pull that racked around him. It was no longer just power. It was identity. It was belonging. It was love twisted with fire and shadow. And in that moment, Elias understood the depth of what had begun. The ties that bound them were not forged in light, not in fate, not in prophecy. They were forged in fire, shadow, desire, and the slow, consuming obsession of a fallen god who had claimed the broken moonborn Omega as his own. And the world below could wait. For now, in the abyss, nothing existed but the fire between them, the shadows that cradled them, and the slow, inevitable rise of a bond that would change kingdoms, gods, and hearts alike. The abyss had grown silent, save for the crackling of Elias's moonfire and the subtle hum of Kale's shadowed presence. Days of training, of trials, of mental and emotional forging had brought the Omega to the edge of something terrifyingly beautiful, mastery of his power, and full surrender to the god who had claimed him. Kale watched him from the darkness, silent, calculating, and impossibly possessive. Every movement Elias made, every flicker of moonfire along his veins, drew the god's gaze like a predator mesmerized by the rarest prey. Elias's pulse quickened under that gaze, feeling it not as scrutiny, but as hunger, ownership, and devotion twisted into obsession. "You have come far," Kale said, voice low and deliberate, threading into the spaces between thought and breath. "Stronger than I anticipated, more deliciously obedient than I had hoped. And yet, there is one final step." Elias's heart thudded, anticipation mingling with desire and fear. "What step?" he asked, voice trembling. He had learned to wield moonfire, to confront illusions, to survive shadows. But Kale's words carried weight that reached into the very marrow of his bones. Kale stepped closer, shadow folding around him like silk, heat and darkness pressing against Elias in a way that made him shiver. "To truly claim you, to bind you completely, you must accept me, not as a teacher, not as a god, not as a savior, but as the one who owns your fire, your soul, your desire. Only then will the bond be unbreakable." Elias swallowed, his chest tightening. He had been rejected, discarded, humiliated, yet here was Kale, the fallen god, offering something stronger than acceptance, possession, obsession, and recognition that made him whole. And he wanted it, wanted the claim, wanted the fire, wanted Kale's unyielding dominance threaded through every fiber of his being. "I accept you," Elias whispered, voice quivering with power and longing. "All of you take me, Kale, completely." Kale's shadow surged forward, wrapping around Elias like liquid night, the god's hand brushing against his cheek, then along his jaw, possessive, claiming, reverent. "Good," Kale murmured, voice low, dangerous, and laced with desire. "Because once bound, you are mine, all of you, and I will not share you. Not with gods, not with mortals, not with fate itself." The moonfire erupted, silver-violet flames spilling across the abyss, illuminating their forms as shadow and fire intertwined. The power within Elias surged, no longer wild or uncertain, but directed, controlled, and intoxicating. It was his own, yet it was Kale's too, claimed, mirrored, and bound. Elias gasped as the shadows enveloped him fully, Kale's presence suffusing every sense. He felt the god's obsession, his possessive hunger, threading into his mind, body, and soul. It was overwhelming, intoxicating, and utterly addictive. He had been broken, rejected, discarded, but now he was complete, whole, dangerous, desired. "You are mine," Kale whispered, lips brushing the corner of Elias's ear. "Forever. And the world will tremble when it realizes what has awakened." Elias's moonfire flared brighter, shadows bending to Kale's will, as if celebrating the binding. "I am yours," he breathed, body trembling, soul ignited, fire and shadow, desire and power, fully intertwined. "Take me. Let me rise with you." Kale's hands moved to clasp Elias's, shadow pressing like silk and steel, his possessive gaze holding the Omega captive in a rapture of power and devotion. "Rise, Moonborn," he murmured. "Rise with me, and nothing in this world will dare to challenge us. I claim you. I bind you. I love you in ways that will consume kingdoms and gods alike." The abyss trembled, responding to the claim, the fire, the shadow, and the bond that had finally been completed. Elias's power surged to heights he had never known, but even more potent than moonfire was the dark, obsessive connection threading him to Kale. They were no longer master and student. They were not just God and Omega. They were intertwined, bound, possessed, and rising together. Pause. For the first time since rejection, Elias smiled. A dangerous, victorious smile, a fireborn declaration to the world that had forsaken him. He had been abandoned, discarded, and ignored. And yet, he was more than anyone had ever expected. He was Kale's. He was fire, shadow, obsession, and desire. And together, they would rise. The world below would not recognize the power they had forged in darkness. But soon, it would bow. And the moonborn Omega, once broken and rejected, would burn brighter than any crown, stronger than any god, and hungrier than any fate. The wind carried whispers of rebellion, fear, and awe through the capital below. Elias stood at the balcony of Kale's citadel, the moonfire in his veins burning brighter than ever, shadows dancing along the stone walls like loyal sentinels. He no longer felt the sting of rejection, the hollow ache of abandonment. He had been claimed, possessed, and awakened. He was no longer just an Omega. He was a force, a weapon, a rising fire that would consume kingdoms. Kale emerged from the darkness behind him, silent as death, his shadow trailing like smoke along the walls. The god's gaze swept over the city, then over Elias, possessive and unyielding, as if measuring the Omega's power and desire against his own. "Do you feel it?" Kale murmured, voice low, rich with obsession. "The fear, the anticipation. The way they whisper your name even before you arrive." Elias nodded, the moonfire coursing through him with every heartbeat. I can feel them. They are waiting." His lips curved into a dangerous smile, fire and shadow reflecting in his eyes. "And they will kneel. They have no choice." Kale's lips curved in a dark, satisfied smile. "Good. That is how it should be. You are mine, Elias. Your power is mine. And soon, the world will see that the broken moonborn Omega I claimed is untouchable." Elias turned to face him, a shiver of desire and acknowledgement running through him. I want them to see, to know, who I am now. Then rise, Kale whispered, stepping closer, shadows curling possessively around the Omega. Rise as mine. Burn brighter than any crown. Wield your fire as I show you, and let your vengeance be a symphony that echoes through every hall, every street, every throne they thought they could keep. Elias closed his eyes, letting Kale's words, his obsession, and the shadows wrap around him. The moon fire surged, responding not just to command, but to desire, rage, and the intoxicating pull of Kale's possessive gaze. He was no longer afraid. He was ready. Below, the kingdom stirred, unaware of the storm that had taken root. The Omega who had been rejected, discarded, and scorned was now rising, claimed by a fallen god, empowered beyond mortal comprehension, and guided by a hand both possessive and obsessive. Kale reached out, brushing a hand along Elias's jaw, possessive and tender all at once. They will fear you, he murmured. They will desire you. They will bend to you, because you are mine, and because you are fire, shadow, and vengeance incarnate. Elias's chest tightened, his pulse echoing the rhythm of the moonfire in his veins. Then let them watch, he whispered, eyes alight with silver-violet flames. Let them see the Omega they rejected, and the god who claimed him. Kale's shadows swirled around them, a living cloak of dominance and obsession, binding them together as the first sparks of their campaign began to ignite. The world would not recognize the fire rising over the kingdoms, the dark power claiming what had been denied, the bond between Omega and fallen god that refused to be ignored. And for the first time since the rejection that had shattered him, Elias smiled, not timidly, not in fear, but with the dangerous, intoxicating thrill of an Omega who had been claimed, awakened, and was ready to rise. The moonfire blazed, shadows danced, and the slow, consuming rise of fire and shadow had begun. The throne room was silent, except for the subtle hum of power vibrating through the stone walls. Kale's shadow stretched across the floor, enveloping Elias like a cloak, binding him, claiming him. Every step the Omega took, every breath, every flicker of the moonfire seemed measured against Kale's possessive gaze. You are mine, Kale murmured, circling Elias, like a predator observing its prize. Not by fate, not by chance, not by anything mortal, but mine by choice, by fire, by darkness, and I will not share you, not now, not ever. Elias shivered, chest tightening, feeling the weight of ownership in every word. The possessiveness stirred a hunger he could not name, a craving to submit fully, to allow Kale's obsession to shape him, guide him, consume him. I am yours, he whispered, voice trembling between fear, desire, and exhilaration. Kale's shadow surged forward, brushing along Elias's arm, chest, neck, possessive, claiming, intimate. Say it louder, he demanded, low and dangerous. Let the world hear that the Omega they rejected belongs to me. Let them see that the fire you carry answers to no one but me. I am yours, Elias cried, moonfire flaring, shadows writhing around him like loyal beasts. The words tasted like power, desire, and submission all at once. He felt Kale's obsession as a tangible pressure, wrapping around him, drawing him closer, binding him to the god in ways that defied logic and reason. Good, Kale purred, a predatory curve to his lips. He stepped even closer, the shadows between them tightening. Now feel it. Feel the weight of being claimed. Every glance, every heartbeat, every pulse of fire within you belongs to me. And you will learn that to resist is impossible. To deny me is futile. Elias gasped, the fire within him surging, responding not just to Kale's words, but to his desire, his possessiveness, his obsession. He was consumed, thrilled, and terrified all at once, the tension between power, love, and dominance twisting within him like a storm. Kale, he breathed, shivering as the shadows brushed over his skin, a dark caress. I can't. I don't want to. I belong to you. Kale's lips brushed his ear, voice a velvet whisper that made the Omega's knees weak. Exactly, he murmured. Every part of you is mine. Your fire, your body, your soul, every desire, every fear, every thought. You are mine, and I will teach you to use it, to wield it, to rise with it. As mine, the moonfire flared brighter, the shadows responding, tightening, binding them in a dance of possession and awakening. Elias's mind and heart raced, consumed by the duality of fear and thrill, dominance and submission. Kale's obsession was a force he could not resist, and he did not want to. You will rise, Kale whispered, voice low, possessive, and utterly consuming. And the world will kneel, not just because of your power, but because of the fire I have claimed in you. And you will learn to love it as I do. Elias's pulse hammered in his chest, moonfire blazing through his veins. I will, he breathed. All of me is yours. Kale's shadow swirled around him, holding him, claiming him, marking him in ways that were invisible yet undeniable. The possessive heat, the obsessive pull, the slow-burning love, all intertwined, as Elias realized he was no longer just a moonborn Omega. He was the Omega of a fallen god, a being whose power and desire could shape kingdoms, defy fate, and consume hearts. And in that moment, amidst shadows and fire, Elias understood fully. To be claved by Kale was to embrace fire, darkness, obsession, and love, twisted together in a way that could never be broken. The chains of desire were invisible, but unyielding, and Elias welcomed them with a trembling, fiery heartbeat. The first city fell before them like paper in flame. Elias rode at Kale's side, moonfire blazing along his arms, shadows swirling in tandem with his heartbeat. Every step, every pulse of fire, every whispered command from Kale reinforced the Omega's awakening. They were no longer merely a god and his Omega. They were a force, a storm that kingdoms could not withstand. Kale's possessive gaze never left Elias, a constant weight and thrill. Remember, Kale whispered, voice low and honeyed with obsession, every soul you touch, every throne you claim, every life you bend, it belongs to us, mine and yours, and they will understand fear, desire, and devotion in equal measure. Elias's chest surged with pride and fire. I understand, he replied, moonfire flaring brightly as it licked the walls of the besieged city. And I will make them see that the Omega they rejected is more than they ever imagined. The streets trembled under their presence. Shadows crept along walls, tendrils reaching out like hands of judgment. Moonfire ignited the sky with silver-violet flames, illuminating the terror and awe on the faces of those who had doubted. Kale's possessive hand brushed against Elias's back, grounding him, claiming him even amidst the chaos. Pa 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 pa. They're afraid, Kale murmured, darkly satisfied. Good. Fear sharpens desire, and desire strengthens power. You are learning, Elias. You are becoming unstoppable. Mine unstoppable. Elias's lips curved into a dangerous smile. Let them fear. Let them burn. Let them see us, Kale. Let them see who we are. Kale's shadow swirled around them both, protective, possessive, consuming. They will, he said, lips brushing the Omega's ear, sending shivers down his spine. And they will bow, not just to your power, but to the bond we share, to the obsession, to the fire they can never touch. With a single command, the city's remaining resistance crumbled. Elias's moonfire surged, shadows binding every enemy, bending them to Kale's will. It was a conquest, not just of territory, but of hearts, of fear, and of desire. The Omega, who had been discarded, now held kingdoms in the palm of his hand, guided and claimed by the god who had awakened him. Kale's lips found Elias's briefly, a possessive kiss full of hunger and obsession. You are mine, he whispered, voice dark and vibrating through Elias's chest. All of you, every pulse, every breath, every spark of fire, you belong to me, and through you, we rise. Elias trembled under the intensity, body and soul aflame with desire, power, and possessive love. I am yours, he gasped, voice trembling, yet resolute. All of me is yours. The city lay in shadow and fire, trembling beneath the weight of a god's obsession and an Omega's awakened power. And as Kale pressed closer, possessive, obsessive, yet tender in his own dark way, Elias realized something profound. This conquest was only the beginning, is about to be the beginning. Together they would rise over kingdoms, over gods, over fate itself. And no rejection, no betrayal or mortal whim could ever sever the bond forged in shadows, fire, and obsession. The world would kneel, and the Omega, who had once been cast aside, would burn brighter than any throne, any god, and any destiny. The citadel atop the black cliffs had never known such a presence. Shadows coiled along every stone, whispering with the pulse of moonfire. Elias stood beside Kale at the balcony, overlooking the kingdoms that now trembled beneath their names. The wind carried both the scent of smoke and the thrill of conquest, a symphony of fear and awe that stirred the Omega's chest. Kale's hand brushed along Elias's side, possessive, intimate, claiming. "Do you feel it?" Kale asked, voice low, velvet with obsession. "Every soul beneath us knows who commands them, who they serve, and who holds the fire that binds them." Elias inhaled, the moonfire blazing stronger with each heartbeat. "I feel it," he whispered, silver violet flames reflecting in his eyes. "And I like it. I like that we are unstoppable." Kale's shadow surged, curling around Elias like a living cloak. "Good, because we are more than gods, more than kings, more than prophecy. We are a bond that cannot be broken, a fire that cannot be doused, a desire that cannot be denied. And you are mine, all of you." Elias trembled under the weight of those words, body and soul ignited by the possessive, obsessive claim. He had been rejected once, discarded, abandoned, but now he was desired, claimed, awakened. His moonfire flared in response, a reflection of both his power and his devotion. "Kale," he breathed, voice trembling yet resolute, "I am yours completely." Kale's lips brushed his ear, shadowed fingers threading into his hair. "And I will never let you go," he murmured. "Not now, not ever. You are mine in every way, and through you, I claim the world. Through you, we rise, we burn, we conquer." The citadel itself seemed to pulse with their combined power, shadows bending and twisting, moonfire flaring like twin stars in the night. The kingdoms below whispered their names in fear, awe, and reverence. And for the first time since the rejection that had shattered him, Elias smiled, not timidly, not in sorrow, but with dangerous, intoxicating triumph. The slow, obsessive bond between them had become unbreakable, their desires and powers intertwined, a force that would reshape kingdoms, gods, and hearts alike. Kale's possessiveness pressed against him, suffocating and thrilling in equal measure, and Elias welcomed it, leaning into the fire, the shadows, the obsession that bound them. "Rise with me," Kale whispered, voice threading through the wind, through fire, through shadow. "Rise and let them witness the Omega they discarded, the God who claimed him and the fire they cannot withstand." Elias stepped forward, moonfire blazing along his arms, shadows curling around his legs. "We rise," he said, voice strong, unwavering. "Together." And as the first night of their reign fell, the throne of shadows was no longer just a citadel. It was a testament to obsession, desire, fire, and claim. A throne forged by a god and the Omega he had awakened. The world below could watch, tremble, and kneel, but they could never touch what Kale had claimed, nor the moonborn Omega who had risen from rejection into a power that would shake kingdoms, bend destinies, and burn brighter than any crown. The wind howled across the cliffside, carrying with it the whispers of kingdoms long lost, gods long forgotten, and a destiny no mortal had dared to defy. Elias stood beside Kale at the edge of the citadel, moonfire blazing along his veins, shadows clinging to his form like a second skin. Every heartbeat echoed with the rhythm of power, possession, and desire. Kale's presence pressed against him, possessive and consuming. "They whisper of you," Kale said, voice low, threaded with obsession. "The Omega they rejected, the fire they feared, the shadow they cannot escape. Do you hear it, Elias? They know, they fear, they crave." Elias inhaled deeply, letting the moonfire surge through him. "I hear it," he whispered, "and I want them to see, to feel the weight of what they denied. I want them to know that what they rejected is unstoppable." Kale's shadow swirled, wrapping around the Omega, both protective and claiming. "Good," he murmured, lips brushing the side of Elias's neck. Because soon, they will witness everything. The fire you carry, the shadow I command, the bond we share. And none of them, none, will dare challenge us. Elias shivered, the possessive, obsessive energy threading through him like liquid fire. He had once been discarded, rejected, left to crumble beneath the weight of fate. But Kale's claim had awakened him, body, mind, and soul. The moonfire was no longer just power. It was identity, desire, and devotion, bound inseparably to the god who had possessed him wholly. Kale, Elias murmured, turning into the god's shadowed presence, eyes blazing silver violet. I am yours, completely, no matter what comes, no matter who stands before us. I am yours. Kale's lips curved into a predatory, possessive smile. Exactly, he whispered, voice threading into the very marrow of Elias's bones. And soon, the world will understand. They will see the Omega they discarded, the god who claimed him, and the fire that burns between us. And they will bow. The moonfire flared, shadows twisting and surging in response to their combined presence. It was a power that defied mortal understanding, a bond that could not be broken, and a love that was dark, obsessive, and consuming. Elias's pulse quickened as Kale pressed closer, possessive and tender all at once, lips brushing against his ear. Rise with me, Kale murmured, and let them witness everything we are. Let them fear, let them desire. Let them know that nothing, no one can take you from me. I will, Elias whispered, body trembling with fire and shadow, mind alive with the thrill of possession and devotion. With you, always. Kale's shadow enveloped him fully, a living cloak of obsession, desire, and protection. And as the wind screamed across the cliffs, carrying the first omens of the final battles to come, Elias understood completely. The Omega, who had been broken, discarded, and rejected, had risen, and with the fallen god who possessed him, nothing could stand against their fire, their shadow, their unbreakable bond. The crown they would claim was not just of kingdoms, not just of gods, it was of fire, desire, obsession, and love, and the world would tremble before it. The skies above the citadel darkened, clouds swirling as if the heavens themselves feared what was to come. The kingdoms below whispered, armies mustered, and gods watched from afar, sensing a force that defied both prophecy and dominion. Elias stood at the center of the obsidian courtyard, moonfire thrumming through his veins, shadows coiling like serpents, ready to strike. Kale's presence was a shadow upon him, possessive, unwavering, obsessive. They think they can challenge us, Kale murmured, lips brushing Elias's ear, sending shivers of fire and desire through him. They believe the Omega they discarded is weak, that the god who claimed him can be defied. Let them try. Elias inhaled deeply, letting moonfire flare and shadows tighten around his limbs, his chest, his soul. I am ready, he whispered, for them, for us, for everything we are. The first trial came as a tempest, a storm of fire and darkness conjured by the jealous gods who could not tolerate Kale's possession of the Omega. Lightning struck the courtyard, shadows clawing at the ground, and Elias moved as one with Kale, every step a dance of flame and darkness. Moonfire surged from his hands, consuming the assaults, bending to his will, while Kale's shadow coiled protectively around him, possessive, demanding. Consuming. You are mine, Kale whispered, voice low, vibrating through Elias's chest. Every strike, every breath, every heartbeat belongs to me, and through you, we rise. Elias shivered, feeling the weight of Kale's obsession pressing into him, guiding him, binding him. The fire in his veins was no longer mere power, it was desire, devotion, and possession intertwined, every flicker of moonfire responding to Kale's possessive pull. I am yours, he gasped, unleashing a torrent of fire that shattered the storm around them. As the gods' trials escalated, so did the tension between them. Kale's hands traced the edges of Elias's jaw, down his arms, possessive and claiming. Every brush of shadow against skin was a reminder. This Omega belonged wholly to him. Elias's pulse thundered with fire, desire, and submission. Kale, I feel it. I feel you, in every part of me. Kale's lips pressed briefly against his, a kiss both dark and consuming. And I will never let you go, he murmured, voice threading into every corner of Elias's mind. Not in battle, not in desire, not in life or death. You are mine, now and forever. The trials pushed them further than ever before. Fire and shadow, passion and obsession, desire and dominance blending into a storm that neither could resist. Yet through the chaos, through the battles of gods and kingdoms, their bond only deepened. Moonfire flared brighter, shadows twisted tighter, and the possessive obsessive love threading through them became a force stronger than any army or divine decree. When the final wave of the trials subsided, the courtyard was a battlefield of light and shadow, smoke curling into the skies. Elias stood at Kale's side, chest heaving, body alight with moonfire and passion, shadows clinging possessively around them both. He had survived, thrived, become more than anyone could have imagined. Kale's hand found his, fingers lacing possessively through his own. "You have passed," Kale murmured, lips brushing Elias's temple, voice low and reverent. "Not just the trials, but mine. You are mine. Every spark, every desire, every heartbeat." Elias shivered under the intensity, fire and shadow coiling through him. "And I will always be yours," he whispered, body trembling, soul ablaze. "In every way, Kale, forever." And as the sun rose behind the black cliffs, casting the citadel in silver-violet light, the moonborn Omega and the fallen god stood unbroken, their bond consummated through fire, shadow, and obsessive, consuming love. The trials had tested them, but they had emerged not just victorious, but inseparable. The citadel trembled beneath their combined presence. Moonfire blazed from Elias's veins like molten silver, coiling through the shadows that Kale commanded with a possessive ease that made every heartbeat shiver with fire and obsession. "You are more than I imagined," Kale whispered, shadow brushing along Elias's arms, spine, and jaw, possessive, consuming, worshipful, all at once. More fire, more shadow, more desire than the gods could ever have predicted. Elias's chest heaved, moonfire flaring brighter with every word. I am yours," he gasped, trembling under Kale's possessive pull. "All of me, completely." Kale's lips pressed against the side of his neck, teeth grazing skin, shadowed hands threading into his hair. "Mine," he growled, low and dangerous, voice threading into the very marrow of Elias's bones. "Every heartbeat, every flicker of fire, every pulse of desire, mine. And now, you rise fully, Omega of fire, shadow, and obsession." With a single thought, Elias unleashed the moonfire completely, silver-violet flames cascading through the citadel, bending the shadows Kale had cast into an endless, writhing symphony of darkness and light. The energy surged through him, feeding on Kale's possessive obsession, intertwining their power and desire in a way that transcended mortal and divine understanding. Period. Kale's hand pressed to his chest. Heartbeats synchronizing with Elias's, shadows coiling possessively around them both. "Feel it, Elias," Kale whispered, lips brushing his ear. "Feel the weight of being mine. Feel the world trembling beneath our fire and shadow. You are unstoppable because you are mine. Period." Elias trembled, moonfire blazing like a living creature, shadows bending and twisting to Kale's will. "I feel you," he whispered, voice trembling with awe, fear, desire, and devotion. "I am yours, entirely. Take me. Claim me fully." Kale's shadow surged, enveloping them, pressing against Elias's body, consuming and possessive. "Good," he murmured, voice low and reverent, "because you belong to me. Every spark, every breath, every desire, mine, and together we rise above fate, gods, and kingdoms alike." The Omega's power reached its apex. Moonfire blazed in tandem with the shadows, their bond a living, breathing force that shook the citadel. Elias felt it, power, obsession, and love interwoven into a single, unstoppable force. The Omega he had been before rejection no longer existed. He had ascended, claimed fully, and awakened in ways no one could challenge. Kale's lips met his in a dark, consuming kiss, possessive and worshipful. Shadows pressed against them, moonfire flaring like twin stars, and Elias surrendered completely, mind, body, and soul entwined with the God who had claimed him. "I am yours," he whispered, trembling and trembling again, every part of him alight with power and desire. Forever, completely, all of me, yours. Kale's hands pressed possessively along his spine, shadow curling around them both like molten silk. And I will never let you go, Kale growled, voice vibrating through bone and fire. Forever Omega of fire and shadow. Mine, always mine. The citadel shook, moonfire and shadows intertwining, kingdoms trembling below, and the Omega fully ascended, possessed and consumed by love, obsession, and power. Nothing could stand against them now. Nothing could resist. Elias had risen, fully claimed, and nothing, not gods, mortals, or fate itself, could deny him the throwing that awaited. He was the moon-born Omega, possessed by a god, obsessed, desired, and unstoppable. And together with Kale, he would burn brighter than any destiny, any crown, any god. The world below lay trembling, kingdoms kneeling, and gods silenced in awe. The citadel atop the black cliffs blazed with moonfire and shadow, a testament to power, possession, and obsession. Elias stood at Kale's side, silver-violet flames coursing through his veins, shadows coiling possessively around him like loyal serpents. Kale's hand pressed possessively to his chest, fingers threading into hair and bone, marking him, claiming him. Do you feel it, Elias? Kale murmured, voice low, dangerous, yet reverent. This is everything. Fire, shadow, desire, vengeance, love, all of it, ours. Elias shivered, body and soul trembling with exhilaration, submission, and ecstasy. I feel it, all of it, he whispered, eyes blazing with moonfire. And I am yours, always, completely, forever. Kale's lips brushed against his, shadow and desire intertwining, possessive, consuming, worshipful. Good, Kale murmured, because nothing will ever touch you, not gods, not mortals, not fate. You are mine, and through you, we reign. The final challenge had come, not from armies, not from kingdoms, but from the threads of destiny itself, attempting to unweave the bond Kale had claimed. Shadows clashed with silver lightning, moonfire flaring in impossible intensity, but Elias stood steadfast, his power a torrent of devotion and desire, intertwined with Kale's possessive dominance. You are unstoppable, Kale whispered, voice vibrating through every fiber of Elias's being. Because you are mine, because I am yours, and together we burn brighter than fate, brighter than the gods themselves. Elias's moonfire erupted fully, silver-violet flames cascading into shadowed coils that bent to Kale's will. He felt the Omega he had once been, the one rejected, discarded, broken, fade entirely. In its place stood the Omega who had risen, claimed, and ascended, fully possessed by the god who adored and obsessed over him. Kale pressed his body against Elias's, possessive hands and shadows claiming every inch, every heartbeat. And now, he murmured, lips brushing his temple, the crown is yours, ours, forged in fire and shadow. No one can take it. No one can take you from me. Elias trembled, chest heaving, moonfire and shadow entwined in perfect harmony. Then, let us rise, he whispered, lips finding Kale's in a kiss that was dark, consuming, and eternal. Together, always. The citadel blazed, kingdoms below bowed, and even the gods fell silent before the fire and shadow that were theirs. And in that moment, possession became love, obsession became devotion, and power became a testament to their bond. Yet, in the quiet after the storm, as moonfire faded to a soft, silver glow and shadows curled protectively around them, a single bittersweet truth lingered. They had won kingdoms, gods, and fate itself, but nothing could erase the memory of rejection, loss, or the pain that had forged Elias into the Omega he had become. Kale's hand pressed to Elias's cheek, thumb brushing along a tear he did not bother to hide. Even in sorrow, Kale murmured, you are mine, every heartbeat, every spark of fire, mine, and together we endure, always. Elias rested his head against Kale's chest, shadows and fire wrapping them together in a cocoon of obsession, love, and power. Forever and always, he whispered, voice trembling, body alight with fire, shadow, and devotion. The crown was theirs, not of kingdoms, not of thrones, but of fire, shadow, obsession, and love. And as the world watched, trembling, the Omega and the fallen god stood unbroken, their bond eternal, their passion unyielding, their rise complete. The moonborn Omega had been rejected, and yet, in the arms of the god who possessed him fully, he had become more than fate. More than fire, more than shadow. He had become immortal. They had claimed each other. They had claimed the world, and nothing would ever take that away.